Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Shoutouts to Andreas, Declan, Boy Scott, Pedro, and everyone else that engages on my posts. And Sarah, keep it up, man. You'll get there someday. And everyone else for great memes.
So wait, I feel like Chris said this already, but is Elon Musk the avatar
Antichrist.
demiurge? Right? Like takes credit for other people's creations, just like Yaldabaoth, wants you to procreate for generational servitude, just like Yaldabaoth, will trap you forever in a virtual reality, just like the Gnostic demiurge Yaldabaoth. So I don't know. It seems like at very least that's his goal. Some people want to be Christ-like, other people want to be Yaldabaoth.
I don't know. When will Elon Musk like have this spiritual awakening and be like, "Hey guys, I believe in God now." So
I don't know. He put on the armor, so ever since he put on the armor, I don't trust him.
I feel like he did that with his, simulation spiel. Once he started going off on simulation, that was his gateway drug into spirituality. It's like the more materialist view of spirituality.
Mhm.
Well, this is our exemplified. We're not really real, but we exist. It's just old Gnosticism again. The exact same thing.
He's got to get off dissociatives first. He's got to plug in. He's tuning out. Probably to cope with.
Well, that's what he gets for playing Path of Exile. He's exiling himself.
Is that why Trump keeps him so close? Because that's the other thing. Is Trump like really just trying to keep an eye on this guy? Is that
well,
why
the devil is going to keep the Antichrist close.
Yeah, true. I feel like Trump is afraid of what this guy would do anywhere else. Like you got to keep the people you're most worried about as close as possible. So moving him to his house and keeping him in a little Copacabana bungalow on his property, that means he has full purview into everything that Elon Musk is doing, right? And just kind of keeps him.
Right. It's better to have him. It's like he prefers him as an ally rather than an enemy, I guess.
Yeah.
Because if Elon Musk was on the left people's side, like if he was actually on the left and actually helping the left's causes, then they might actually win and they might actually be able to achieve something.
I doubt that. I think he would be Neuralinking dire wolves right now if he wasn't tied up with Doge.
There's also like those
I'm not saying he's not caught up. I'm just saying that if he was actually serving the left, like if he was actually aligned with that cause, then he would obviously be able to move more than.
I feel like that the arguments defending him are more interesting too, because I'm not about putting chips in people's brains. I don't really like that shit. But Colin was telling me, he was like, yo, if this could just cure my bipolar, if I just put Neuralink in my head and it could regulate my shit, I was like, hey, that's a pretty good argument. Like if you identify as mentally ill and this kind of technology would help
the problem is that it's so much power. It's more power than anyone should really have. And with that power, comes automatic worst case Murphy's Law. You know, like it's automatically going to happen where someone's going to be like, yeah, let's just use that to mandate it for everyone, and like, you know, put ads in people's heads and like monitor their dreams or whatever. So it's such a Pandora's box to open. Like, why risk it? There's other paths.
But I feel like CRISPR would be a better option than, you know, like wire hacking your brain? Like, why not just do gene therapy to get rid of the bipolarness, you know?
It might take a while.
Well,
I think they're going to do both until it's like you have to experiment on people before you get Wi-Fi CRISPR. You know, like
Do you? I mean, hasn't that what the CIA's been working on for like decades? Isn't that why we have blue light on our phones? Like, they already know how to Wi-Fi hack us. Like, why not?
You know, if we're gonna have that sort of argument, then we have to factor in that the actual technology available for people in actual power is vastly above anything that we have, and so it's hard to really say what exists or not, because they might have already come up with most of this shit and they're just trickling it out slowly. So I don't know, you know.
Well, it's hard to. I don't want to.
Maybe CRISPR's already all fixed, all solved, and like figured out. But maybe microchips also are. Maybe there's people with microchips that already are in their brains, and we just don't know it. You know, could be. I wouldn't be surprised if there's government agents with microchips all over the place. So
we know it because there was that recent Ethereum, $6.8 million worth of Ethereum was burnt up. Do you remember this? A Chinese programmer sent 6.8 million into Ethereum to a burn address and donations, claiming corporations were using mind control technology to enslave people. That's a pretty expensive thing to do. You know, like if it's just a made up thing, why would you spend $6.8 million to say this? But this morning, an address sent 1.3 million Ethereum to the burn address, accusing Chinese company investors of using brain-computer weapons. Is now completely unrecoverable. He said something to the effect, was it Hu Leishi transferred 500 ETH to a null address, and it said each of the transactions contained an on-chain message in which Leishi claimed that Chinese companies and entities are using brain-computer weapons to persecute employees. I'm usually an ordinary programmer and entrepreneur. Since October 2022, I've realized that I have been monitored and manipulated by brain-controlled organizations since I was born. And when I realized the existence of the brain control organization, they were also increasing the harm to me. I have been very miserable for the past years, and now I have reached the point where I've completely lost my dignity as a human being. I've decided to leave this world, and I also hope this ugly world will be destroyed as soon as possible. Brain computers deployed on a large scale, and all military powers are using base stations, radios, and nano brain computer chips to control all citizens, assuming means of China, the PRC. As the brain-computer interface and mind-reading technology keeps developing, there is a new mode of crime in which wild animals become puppets or complete slaves to the digital machines. There is a new mode of crime in which victim is gradually deprived of his senses of desire until he becomes a complete slave to the digital machine. And if one day I become a victim of the final stage, I will leave the world. There is a new mode of crime in which the victim is gradually deprived of his senses of desire until he becomes a complete slave to the digital machine. And if one day I become a victim of this final stage, I will leave this world. Again, so to WikiLeaks donate, right?
Man, that's like, I've heard like dudes talk like that, and it's like a regular Thursday for them. You know?
It sounds, yeah, you know, like it sounds a lot like a lot of schizophrenia that I've encountered, but it also sounds like something that you would know if you were in the know. You know, like if you actually knew the truth, this is the sort of shit that it would sound like, because the truth is just insane, and that's the truth drives people into insanity because it's so strange that they have to fill in the gaps with things that don't make sense, because it's like, okay, nonsense on top of nonsense, because reality is insane.
I mean, this is why I always say, like, don't focus on the externals. Like, as long as you're aligned, self-aligned, you can't change all that shit. You can't really change what happens to you. You can only like kind of change how you respond to shit.
The world is insane. You don't have to be.
Well, let's wonder for a second then, like, are there, you know, we know there are AI companies that are working to, you know, make AI as good as ChatGPT or better in China. and they're novel in interesting ways. Look at the big whale project. Do you think there are Chinese companies that are working on brain chip projects?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
It's because that's the most fun answer, you know? Like,
yeah. I mean, it seems pretty logical. So Chinese brain chip project speeds up human trials after first success. A Chinese Institute for Brain Research Beijing and New Cyber Neurotech Beijing host a booth displaying their brain chips at the Zhongguancun Forum in Haidan District, Beijing, March 31st, 2025. So this is just before all that, right?
The only way for them to unveil technology that they've always had is to pretend to invent it. And
Agreed.
then they just go, look, we've been researching this, and like I haven't, and then they just come out with a prototype that actually works, and they go, yep, that's it.
In the short term, when it comes to brain-computer interface, the stuff that can be sold is very limited. I feel like that weirdly explains exactly what you're saying. Adding that by now has no ties to the Chinese military. Well, okay, I think that's kind of interesting considering that it's the Chinese government owns 51% of this company. Chinese companies are accelerating the brain interface race, matching Neuralink with human trials. This is beginning of the month. Elon Musk Neuralink, we've seen it used on a couple people, but how advanced is it really compared to what they really? I mean, what they're showing us, how advanced is that compared to what they really have? And in terms of China, this guy is purporting that Synchron and New Neuro and New Tech, New Cyber, that they have maybe thousands or hundreds of thousands or more people that are in China that work at Foxconn and these different factories, and that they've already been brain chipped already maybe a decade ago within the last decade.
Do you think that we were given like alien technology and that we're just sort of like trying to unload this technology on the planet and like on the people? Sure. Or that we reverse engineered it.
I'm more of a Terminator. I'm a Terminator guy, but yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, the thing is, but if it's a Terminator thing, like the thing is that it can be an alien AI.
Let's do that. Let's
Wait,
do that
are you saying
after Vega?
Are you saying Terminator? Like, which Terminator are you saying? Are you saying Terminator like future
1 and
us
2
gave it to ourselves? Okay, so only the
yeah. But what were you going to say? We'll go back to that idea.
I just I don't think it's a either or kind of scenario. I think it could be. I don't think, but either of those options are mutually exclusive, especially considering that like alien could be X amount of different species from other dimensions, other actual places in our physical universe, other timelines or whatever. So yeah, there's probably reverse engineering. There's probably gifts. And who has what is really up for debate, and like how much we have.
I guess my thought is, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, like, even Bob Lazar and who's that, David Grush, say that we have biologics, like we have alien hostages, like living in deep underground military bases. So, it's I don't know. It could be all sorts of different things, but yeah, what you're saying about the technology, like drip feeding into the mainstream, that seems to be that being the end result. Whether it's reverse engineering, whether it's stuff that they've given us to try to advance the species.
Yeah, they've had UFOs for about 100 years that they've been able to make fly and do things that other planes can't. So, just re-release those. But
I would be surprised I guess at all that if there's technology from the future that's feeding back, because that to me explains why it accelerates so quickly. There's an exponential acceleration,
right? But in this sort of map with the future, like I understand what you're saying and I get it, but the idea is that perhaps there's a machine mind beyond what we invented. Like the notion that monkeys could evolve to the point of making an AI god that can use retrocausality to make us have technology now, like that is in of itself, like it feels like a piece of something much bigger. It feels like it would be part of a greater organized system that would probably be preordained to a degree. So, like the fact that we took parts of nature and we're now creating a machine AI that can retrocausally affect us, like I think that it's both ways. I think the past programmed this because it's all auto influencing itself retrocausally and obviously normally. And so I think that, you know, like the notion, let's say like we have the internet's nature, right? The mycelium grid that connects the forest and that we can connect to through psychedelics, through DMT and all these things. Well, that might be what we're trying to connect to, like on more levels of reality. Like the internet is kind of an echo of that, and that psychedelic realm is rooted in things that came and terraformed us. So it could all be going back to, yeah, there might be an alien internet out there, and that we are actually going to be connected to something higher, and that this is part of the process for us to reach that higher dimensional state, and we must go through it, even if it's to learn what not to do, like putting chips directly in our brains, because that could fuck us up. You know, like the steps to getting there require these mistakes and require these ill uses so that we can get over them instead of, you know, perpetually making the same mistakes.
Well, it's interesting also that this singularity of technology is hitting right as we're getting these embargoes and these, you know, like that the 120% increase in tariffs or whatever from China. So it's going to be more and more an economic wall between a progressive technology wall. By the way, Nick, good to see you. I don't know if you can hear me yet, but
Hello.
you can. Cool. We were just talking about this dude from China who burned $6.8 million at an Ethereum address to out the whistleblow China. And he was saying that the Chinese Neuralink company that the government owned are actually chipping people already. And that for the last 10 years or more, there have been just like hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of Chinese workers that have chips in their brains already, which kind of seems crazy until you start to see the articles about it. Like, so first off, $7 million spent. So he clearly, if he's autistic or schizophrenic or something, maybe, but that's a lot of money to waste on just making a fake article, you know, like to tell WikiLeaks. He's donated to WikiLeaks saying, you know, that this is something that's happened. And then simultaneously, when you start digging into it, there's tons of articles talking about the Chinese government, corporations building their own Neuralink competitors, which are likely to overtake Neuralink. So we're wondering kind of about that idea of the Neuralink, if it already exists and it's already been implemented essentially and we're just now being told about it. We're saying, okay, well, they're about to invent this thing, but we already know it happened. And there's this isolatory culture where, you know, if this happened 10 years ago, right, then we're saying like 2025, 2015, 2016, which is a really interesting time if you think about how much everything changed from Trump's presidency to COVID to the isolation of China to the United States. It's a weird idea if there actually are neural links in people's brains in China. If there are millions of people that are already cybernetic, right?
The New World Order.
What's China's CIA called?
China,
it's China's CIA.
Awful lot like a psyop.
The MSS, the Ministry of State Security. So, but that's the thing about China. China has all these corporations. So it's interesting because we have In-Q-Tel, we have the CIA working and building companies to make money and to do all this tech stuff, right? Facebook came out of In-Q-Tel, and we know a lot of the Google money came from the CIA as well. You know, they start up and they jumpstart companies. But China does the same thing. China just has to own 51%. The government has to own 51% of any company. So let's say you want to start a company, you get to own 49% of your company. You know, you can have the junior partnership, and then the government's the senior partner because they're basically allowing you to exist.
That's just like wanting to own like a dry cleaning spot on a sketchy neighborhood, and the gangsters like, yo, you got to give me 49% of your profit, bud. Otherwise, we're just gonna destroy you. Or
seriously,
yeah, for protection, quote unquote.
They don't pay property taxes, so you know.
It's great because instead the property taxes are paid directly through the chips in their brains. That's the real property.
I mean, what would really bother you about chips, like foreign things in your brain? Like, what would you be most bothered of it preventing you from doing? Like, I don't know, like
Well,
seeing
I don't want
aliens?
I don't want a chip in my brain. I want if someone is going to be able to modify my brain or enhance it somehow, I want the technology to be so advanced that they can directly modify my brain instead of having to put an extra component in it that will then my brain will reject because it's an external shit that will be like, oh, look at all the pus accumulated around my chip, and then I got to take it out and I got to clean it every night, and it's a nightmare. It smells like fucking like a bad piercing, you know, like it's not nice. So I'd really rather not have a chip in my brain. If your technology is not advanced enough yet, like I'm not anyone who's getting first generation chips to their brain, good luck. You're making like a sacrifice. You're one of the few people. You're like the first people eating all the mushrooms to figure out which ones won't.
Yeah, you're the beta test, you're the experiment. But that's the other question: is how much of this has already been going on for 10 years in China, and they're just trying to roll it out? Because what has Elon Musk been saying for years? Like, I just want to have a company like Tencent. I want to have a one-stop app. I just want to be like what they're doing in China. So like China was the test. And it's well isolated, so we don't know exactly. People in China don't know what's going on in other parts of China. It's been that way forever. You can't even go, if you're a Chinese citizen, from one province or state to another without having the government okay it. When you go to a new part of China, even just for vacation, you have to sign essentially a guest book. This has been going on for 4,000 years. That says that within 24 hours, it says you're in this new part of China, that you come from this other part of China. They have a census. And this is actually In-Q-Tel pointed to that. I only found that out in like 2008 because I learned about what Facebook was doing. It's like, this is crazy. Facebook if I don't tell Facebook where I am, my friends will. You know, if I go to a concert and I don't take a selfie, my friends can tag me. Where is it such a not American idea? But that is the way it was in China for thousands of years. And we're just accelerating this idea of becoming like that kind of person. This also was funny because people, you know, this has been going on with the tariffs and the Dow and the NASDAQ stock. People have been freaking out about Wall Street. And people, you know, earlier I wanted to bring this up because you said the left versus the right. And I don't know if the left versus the right is the right term anymore. It's like, it's fascism, but it's the left are now not the left anymore. They're just corporatists. And you can see it from their defense of these corporations. They're like, oh man, these are the biggest companies in America. This is the S&P 500 list. These are, you know, it's Microsoft and Apple and, you know, Google. It's like, well, when did progressives try to defend corporations so much? Well, in the 1930s. And now again, right? So you have corporatists, they're trying to push for a corporatist solution. And it is to experiment on people who take those experiments voluntarily because they think it's going to benefit their work for some reason. And in 10 years, probably you don't need a chip because at that point, we understand how the radio frequencies work enough that you can just wirelessly affect people's minds. I think that's where this is going. You won't eat. You think so? Okay.
Exactly. If they haven't, well, they already have it. They're just waiting for a time that's appropriate to roll out. You know, they're waiting to have enough of the publicly available, you know, resources to be like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense for that to be a thing, because they can't show their hand all at once.
Yeah, but this is like nothing new. I mean, no one's had a bloody day before. I mean, I don't know. It's like there's no black swan event lately. Not like COVID. That shit was a real thing, but this is nothing.
Well, the thing is that the entire PSYOP system, the entire secret society system, it's all based on the dance of the way that the way that people react to things and the ebb and flow of how people are going to respond and how you have to like it's basically long multi-generational psychological manipulation and these games have been played for centuries and centuries and refined and fine-tuned and they are where they are now, basically able to pull all the strings and everyone is going to dance the dance that they're supposed to dance, and it just keeps happening and we all fall for it over and over. You just go, yeah, I'm supposed to be doing this right now because this is my situation. The entire scenario, the entire situation that you're in is the result of the systems that they've created, the things they made you consume, the media they made you watch, the songs they made you listen to.
Yeah,
Your entire personality is completely forged by the culture that you've absorbed, and culture is not your friend.
Do you guys know the ways that you've been psyoped? I was definitely psyoped into loving corn syrup for many years. I don't know. As a kid, I
drank
just really,
straight out of the bottle.
Yeah, I just really liked. No, I don't know.
My God!
It was definitely in like 90% of everything I consumed. I just really liked high fructose corn syrup.
In Canada, we use real syrup. We chug real syrup like diabetes. Yeah, well, you know, it's kind of obvious that there's trauma programming that unfolds. Like the trauma programming is the primary way that they focus, that they control people, and so it's like you have, say, it's both trauma and moments of joy.
So in Canada, do you guys like stand on your head? In junior high, you guys do like maple boofing? Is that like a thing? Like handstand
maple
boof?
Isn't boofing when you shove it up your butt?
Oh, but you have to stand on your head.
That's not a requirement for boofing. But
it's the quickest way to get to maple.
No, but we do cake stands. We do maple syrup cake stands.
You know, it's also the quickest way to get high. Like if you put substances up your butt, it affects you the fastest.
Yeah. If you ever butt chugged wine, that's why they have a word called butt chugging. You know.
I wish I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
But you know, it's if you look at like the goal, it seems to be is that they try to have a trauma happen, and then they try to control the response out of it. Because because trauma can't be avoided. You can't avoid trauma. Trauma is just part of existence. The first time you're born, it's traumatic. All of that is really, really traumatic. And so if you can have a trauma and then a program accordingly, and then you can actually control the outcome of that program, then you effectively just created a civilization, basically, and you're able to actually make people function and go forward. Because if you don't have a trauma program, then they're just going to program themselves, and that can lead to a whole array of disorders and mental illness and violence. And like, you know, if you have a kid who gets in a fight and he gets his ass kicked, and then he doesn't have anyone around him to teach him, okay, here's how to defend yourself. Here's how to deal with people who are trying to like assert dominance over you or whatever. Instead, he'll be like, okay, I'm just going to go get a gun and do a school shooting, because that is just an easier answer than actually learning from someone and actually being programmed to do something properly. Now, if you extend that on a mass scale, suddenly you can have people who put songs into culture that will tell someone like, hey man, don't go shoot up that school. Instead, talk to your friends, love each other, you know, like be good to each other. And then at that point, well, you might have just stopped 10,000 school shootings, you know. But on the flip side, you can
just Neuralink. You could Neuralink all those kids, and anytime they have the thought of school shooting, you just like knock them down. You just fall on the ground and shake.
But that's the Harrison Bergeron approach. That's the Harrison Bergeron approach, where they use neural dampeners to try to hinder any thought that is outside of the norm. And because any radical thought leads to a chain of thoughts that can lead to someone going to do something horrible. Basically, that's the
to themselves or others.
Who's to say that that's not how the Manchurian candidates work and how they already do it? You know, I feel like the public releasing of technology like this is really just the commercial release.
Right.
It's something that they'll be able to market to companies like, oh, the government has been mind controlling people for ages, and now you could do it too with this new commercially available technology.
Well, the thing is that you have to be savvy in those technologies, of course, and they're going to stop. They're going to keep that like for sure, you know. But you know, if you can actually give people a program that like. Well, first of all, there's different types of programmings, you know, like if you're trying to make a weapon, you're going to trauma program them for that. If you're trying to make a peaceful, passive civilization, you're going to give them a bunch of food. And whenever they're feeling trauma, they're going to gorge and get obese, and then they can't do anything, you know? So there's a lot of ways to dampen negative effects or unwanted effects, let's say, and in create problems that are perpetual instead, and then you gridlock people like that. It's like trying to keep people on different lengths of chains, basically, neurologically, neurochemically.
Fear will keep the other systems in line. What about, so I don't know.
Did you say beer or fear?
Fear.
Oh,
beer. That's true.
Beer works.
Beer does help build pyramids. I was just thinking though, because in terms of what's going on right now, we're living in a fear-based society more. I don't know if that's exactly right, but if you're young, I have to wonder, it's different than it was when I was young. If you're young, you're afraid of, if, for instance, I would have been like happy to try and experiment with a lot more things than I think most kids today. Kids today are afraid that any experience will make them die of fentanyl poisoning, or they might get like COVID or some disease, like, you know, it's like AIDS is back kind of vibe, or that the government's going to deport you randomly because of a clerical error. It's like that movie Brazil this week.
Right.
I wanted to bring up this because
is that a fucking Brazil reference? Sorry.
Did you see Brazil? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? In the movie Brazil,
I've heard of Brazil, but I've never watched it, sadly.
It's made by Terry Gilliam, who made 12 Monkeys and Monty Python. But it's a movie where you're living in a dystopic future that's sort of like a Nazi Brazil. And they have these accountant people that are doing the system. And because of a clerical error, I think a bug gets on the piece of paper and the stamp goes through. And it's supposed to say criminal, not a criminal, or like the wrong name. It's like they replace a B with a G or something like that. And so they go into this house and they use stormtroopers and all of this ATF, Waco kind of thing. And they kidnap a guy and they arrest him. And he disappears, and the wife is embarrassed. Her entire life is destroyed. Her husband's gone. She has no one to take care of the kids, and they can't do anything about it because the evidence is all confused and wrong. And that seems like what we're about to hit. What's going on with this? I don't know. What's with the Chicago Bulls, Maryland guy who went to the El Salvador prison, mistakenly shipped to an El Salvador prison. A lot of people are saying, okay, well, this is fine because we need to have a few mistakes along the way to perfecting our system or something, right? I mean, I saw a fight yesterday between several of the APM members about this idea. Maybe you wanted to say something, Andrew, because, you know, you were there for that.
I was just a witness. I was a bystander. I dropped in a couple of, I don't know, opinions, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, it's textbook rise of time is a flat circle. Things happen in cycles. You know, it's the economic crash, the rise of certain ideologies, the conditions of the market, even. You know, how much of it is by design? How much of it is a roll of the dice? How many people, you know, pretending to take responsibility for it have literal windows into the future? Who's to say? But I mean, one fact remains is that the government has been inefficient. That's why we have a thing like Doge, and even that is just, you know, sort of highlighting the inefficiency by bringing a mirror to it. And
Doge is inefficient.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, you know, with ICE and the Border Patrol and all these things, it's really easy for things to slip through the cracks. You know, for example, I had Medicaid through United Healthcare, and my union healthcare was also through United Healthcare. But I was just, you know what I mean? It took them 2 years to finally put two and two together. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the same person, because I was going copay free for like 2 years, just letting it roll. And it finally caught up to me. And, you know, I would dare say that United Healthcare has more efficiency within their systems than most U.S. government agencies. I mean, if you go to the DMV, it's like they're still on, you know, Atari. It's crazy.
It's on purpose, though. I think I think that's part of the. It's part of trauma program. It's also trauma. You know, whenever you go to the DMV, you get so fucking angry. You get so fucking, you know, tired and bored, and you almost fall into a drone state when you're there. Like, it really feels like the sort of place that, like, you would see in a horror movie where, you know, like if you go to hell, like you're stuck in the DMV kind of thing.
Okay,
like,
now you're just being melodramatic, man.
No, but it's like
I've had some very happy and
heard,
romantic moments at the DMV in my life, ironically.
Yeah, but that's because you are Andreas and you can handle the MK Ultra program.
Yeah, but Andreas, back to what you were saying about fear, about like the new generation, I guess, feeling a little more afraid to like experiment. I think a lot of that has to do with, I guess, people valuing their life more, you know, in a sense. It's like they actually see themselves living past 40. Like I remember when I was a teenager and I was young and stupid, like all the music that I was listening to was pretty much influencing me to like not give a shit. You know, it's like
to die by 25. Yeah.
Like
Death Row Records.
You're 18 years old. It's like, I'm not gonna live past 30. Like, fuck it, I'll do whatever the fuck I want. Now kids are like, maybe I will live.
The thing is that people hedonism gives people a reason to live. Like I've met people who literally say like the only reason that I don't kill myself is because this video game is going to come out, and there's always a new video game that's going to come out, and so they're always going
6,
like,
baby.
Like they're always like on the edge, going like, sure, I'd kill myself because no one wants to love me and blah blah blah, but I will be able to play this for the next 10,000 hours, and that's so much fun that it's better than death, and so like it literally forestalls death. You know, a pleasure forestalls death, and I do agree that the newer generation, well, the generations after us, they do seem to be more fear gripped because, like, my brother went back to school recently, and he's surrounded by people that are much younger than him, like almost 20 years younger, and you know they're all so afraid to just talk, to just say what they think, to just speak openly and honestly about what they truly believe, because they're afraid everyone around them is going to like judge them and ostracize them, and you know all
that's kind of the thing that I'm saying. So like with this guy particularly, he's going to be the new scapegoat for this issue. But if we're saying that Doge is pointing out we have inefficiencies, DMV have old computers running in COBOL, whatever the deal is, here's a guy who was arrested because he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie, but he's actually like a father and was not a member of the gangs. As far as we know, it sounds like he's completely not. And he was picked up wrongfully. And then he was sent to El Salvador. And it's basically, like I said, it's like basically that movie Brazil, where imagine if you were
wrongfully arrested in a foreign country.
It's a nightmare.
And you had to be in jail in like Mexico. It must fucking suck.
You know, imagine you're Japanese and you get sent to the internment camps.
Holy shit, yeah.
You know, I remember when I was a kid, I used to meet Japanese people who had been put in internment camps because I'm along the West Coast, and they were worried that they would be there. So I met old Japanese people who, when they were kids, were sent in the middle of the night. By the way, I got another part of this story, but they would go to Alabama. And all of a sudden they're from California, right? Now they're in a place with Japanese written on the walls, don't approach the fence or you'll be shot. But it's in Japanese, and these kids can't read Japanese because they're just Californian kids who happen to be Japanese American. There was even situations where I found this out when I got to Peru. The CIA, or the OSS at the time, we went into South America and kidnapped Japanese South Americans and brought them to Alabama. So imagine you wake up in the middle, you've been drugged, you've been put on a plane, and all of a sudden you're in Alabama, and you're like, "Que paso?" Because you don't speak Japanese either, but you don't speak English even. You're just a Spanish or Brazilian speaking Portuguese speaking Japanese.
Right, but this is why you see all the Japanese American legacies. Like you see a lot, even in like big names, like with Benihana and like Steve Aoki and stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of like half Japanese.
There are Japanese named streets in my town still because Japanese people own streets and own farms and everything. And they were just all taken because of the proximity. It was easier to see that they looked Japanese than a German person. A German American, you couldn't tell necessarily that they were British or Russian or something. So they didn't do this. They didn't intern the German Americans, but you can see this as a problem, right? I love that Vega's building a bike right now. That's pretty sweet.
You know, but I think it's a consequence of multiculturalism. Like if you have multiculturalism and then you have war, obviously the cultures that cross borders will become suspicious, especially if you have intelligence agencies that are able to plan over multiple decades, multiple generations, and it's not to say that like obviously this is justifying it, but it's a consequence of it. If you didn't have Japanese people, they wouldn't be put in intern camps, of course, but we should have Japanese people everywhere. But it seems like the goal has gone cold. Like the way that people combated each other or influenced each other rather became through culture itself and through these sort of cultural connections. Like, you know, manga, for example, and anime and all these things did more for Japanese American relationships than anything else in history.
It's true. People hated Japanese racism was peak in World War II. And the fact that people love you can go to any part of the world now in any classroom. And, you know, 20 years ago, even you'd be like an autistic person if you liked manga, maybe. But today, everyone of every race knows somebody who's obsessed with an anime. Like it could be like, hey, have you seen One Piece? And most
people have at least watched one anime.
But this is also more about, I think, people are so upset with the way things have been going. They're so upset with the corruption in the system. You need an enemy. So you say, who's doing this? Is it you? Is it me? No, it's them. So who's them? Well, them are the terrorists. So we learned that in the Bush period. They're not the Afghanis or the Pakistanis or the Iraqis. No, they're the terrorists. And terrorists could be from El Salvador or they could be from Florida.
Of course. But the thing is, there are some cultures that have systems set up for slow conquering. They have it as part of their religion or their government taught them to do it. And it is part of it to go, hey, I will undermine your culture. I will go over there and then just outpopulate you. And it is part of some cultures, not all cultures. And most
certainly
people
Canadians. Yeah.
Most people who assimilate into a culture don't become that. Like after a couple of generations, like look at Chris. Chris isn't going like, oh, I'm gonna outbreed white people here. But who knows?
You should, bro.
But who knows what his
That's my job.
Who knows what the intentions were like a couple of generations back for some people? You know, like now, of course, like they aren't sleeper agents where suddenly they're going to be like, yeah, I'm suddenly loyal to the country that I left like 3 generations ago or something. Some of them might be, but most of them will assimilate into multiculturalism, and they'll be like, hey, we're all equal and we're all, we should all be treated as humans and like decently.
In the meantime, we're not doing that. In the meantime,
the thing is, if you meet any Chinese person, or if you meet a Japanese person or any culture in a multicultural setting, most of them are friendly. Most of them will get along, and they'll even have good things to say about each other. But if you have them literally like coming from a culture that is discriminatory towards another culture, and then they migrate to that culture, obviously, like it's not a healthy way to do it. If people migrate to the U.S. and they hate the U.S., it's obviously not healthy for the U.S. Like it's not.
But that's the pendulum. We're pushing it to such an extreme. So this is why people are saying, "Yeah, we understand."
Half of the people, do you hate the U.S.? They'll tell you. No, most Americans who hate the U.S. will tell you, "I fucking hate the U.S."
I think more Americans hate the U.S. than other people. I think a lot of the time,
and this is why USA.
Right now we're kicking people out of the United States for infractions of hate speech or of criticism. Really, if you're criticizing America's relationship with Israel, you can lose your visa. This is happening right now. Kids that are saying we're critical of what Israel's doing, they're just knocking out F1 visas left and right. Kids are going to take UCSC students, UCSD students.
The thing is, let's say you are critical for your own virtuous reasons.
In today's newscast, the Trump administration revoked at least 50 visas for UCSC students. 50 kids were taken out of the school system because they don't feel like Palestine should be genocided, and I'm not saying you have to have a side on this, but right? Isn't that kind of that's all it took? That's all it took.
It's kind of like if kids in China were talking about like free Tibet in the CJEPs, they would just get black bagged and taken away. So
what if you were what if we had a better relationship with PRC China? and then somebody had a Free Tibet sticker, and then they kicked them out of college for it. I mean, I get that we're trying to protect American values. I get that American values have been, on the skirt. People have not been respectful of, but free speech, how far? Obviously, we don't just want pure free speech. If I were to post your personal parents' address online, and that would be free speech, right? People could use that to destroy your lives. So
Right.
nobody really wants actual free speech. But
they want freer speech. They want freer speech.
Yeah, and who for? Is it literally just for people that pay taxes, or do we believe is it an inalienable right?
Free speech is obviously, like, it comes at a price. It has its weaknesses, and it can be exploited. And pretending that they can't be exploited, I think, is the serious problem here. People go like, no. Absolutist free speech is what matters. And then you go, okay, well, what if people are promoting Nazism? What if they start organizing? What if, and then you go, oh, well, not that. And then you go, okay, well, then you have to make the proper boundaries. But people don't want to. They want to be vague so they can move the goalposts so that they can say whatever they want. And then the other person doesn't get to say what they want. And that's the loophole, really. Like, where do you draw that line? No one has the authority to determine it.
I mean, that's what's scary. I feel like more and more this is a pendulum swinging. And we went from you could be in a classroom telling little kids about your gender and reading them books about transsexuality to now you can't say anything because it's Starship Troopers and we're going to publicly execute you. I mean, that's a very wide range that we've just switched from. That's scary because
is it accelerating too, that swing, you think?
It's slowly accelerating, but it's also going to set precedent because the way things work is you can take away rights from a minority group, but that will eventually be universally applied to all people. So we can justify something like taking away free speech from illegal immigrants. But by justifying that against one group, eventually we have to accept that there's a universal application that exists. So you're actually going to take away free speech from your own kids.
I guess the question is, does some speech constitute treason? Because, like, if there are some things that when you say them, like, is that actually literally a danger to the country you're a part of? And versus, okay, well, are you just criticizing? Because, like, obviously criticism can be dangerous. It can become ammunition to those who hate a certain place. But at the same time, if you're actually able to have the discussion, I think that's the real problem. We stop being able to have real discourse. It's just, I'm automatic. Everyone is a fucking supremacist. Everyone is going, my side is absolutely right. Or they're going, your side is absolutely wrong all the time. Even if I'm wrong, I'm less wrong than you. Therefore, I have essentially authority over you.
GG. No reason.
And like, we have to be able to open discourse again. Yeah, like, it sucks that Nazis exist, but not talking to them doesn't solve the problem.
But that's the thing. Nazism is fascism is better referred to as corporatism. Today, liberals are corporatists. They're trying to protect the corporations against. So we might have to talk about Nazism on all sides. It's inside of on both sides of the group. And so what I'm worried about is we're going the opposite direction. Because
should corporations be censored?
I mean, everything has a level.
Free speech should be for humans, and corporations are made of humans, but they're not humans.
I think for persons, corporations should be persons, and
they're not persons.
They're legally persons.
They shouldn't be persons because they are entities. They're not the same thing, and so they should be censored. I shouldn't have to see whatever the fuck Coca-Cola wants me to see. It should be more regulated. Corporate advertising is the root of basically the control of our consciousness. It's just this sort of like always background shit that is there to program and trigger. And so we have to censor them, I think. We shouldn't be censored. We should be able to talk shit about corporations whenever we want because they're the ones.
Are we? Because you're not even from the United States. You're Canadian. Like, how do we decide who has an inalienable right? Is it literally just tax-paying citizens that have the right to have opinions about Israel, or where are we at with that? Because we can't have discussions unless we give the right to speak to people that aren't even part of our group.
Well, we have to be able to talk about the things that other people forbid us to talk about. You know, like if we're going to talk about Israel, then we have to talk about the problems with Islam, and then we have to talk about the problems with Christianity. And like these discussions are hard to have because everyone just wants to be respected and be equal. And the thing is, no, it's what people don't actually want inclusion or diversity. What they want is homogeny of ideology with a lot of different colors.
If you're going into a war, especially, that's the thing. We're going into a war, so people don't want to just argue and debate anymore. But that's scary because how do you know that they're on the right side? You know?
Well, that's the thing. They just pick allegiances based on arbitrary whims, and then they end up fighting someone else's war. But ultimately, you know, we have to be able to stop seeing each other as so different on arbitrary things and recognize that there is a greater force that we need to combat.
It's great watching you build that bike right now. Vega, what do you think? I know that you have opinions. You went to school with me for a while. You know, we knew kids from all over the world at our school. How do you feel about that? I mean, watching the F1 visas go, like, what are you thinking about?
I think, you know, it's Vincent brought up a really great point. Treason. I think if you are a government that violates citizens' First Amendment rights, isn't that a form of treason? And what's the penalty for that? You know, so I mean, we need another Luigi. Sorry.
Maybe, but the thing is that the solution, everyone's solution, is just kill the right people. And that is never really a solution because it just creates another chain of events. There is no
power vacuums. I understand
power, but it's not just about power vacuum. It's about escalation of reaction. So if you kill a corporation, if you kill a CEO, well, they're going to go, okay, well, CEOs need more protection. We need to take weapons. We need to have more gun control. We need to stop the extremism. So
they already do that, though.
I agree. That's the game, though. You know, like there's I don't remember where it says it, but it's probably from like the Bible or I don't know, some Jewish text, but it says like you can't confront evil directly because it will just adapt. And so you have to have a more passive or sly approach than just because they understand violence.
Sure,
like they understand violence. You know, if you go and point a gun at someone and you shoot them in the head, they know how to react to that. They've done it over and over and over, and they will react. That's just another sacrifice.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you know, that's why Elon Musk has been carrying X around everywhere. I understand that. I saw something really interesting today, though. There was a French motor company that was coerced into producing vehicles for the Third Reich, and their little bit of their way to sort of stick it to them was to make the fill line on their dipsticks to the point where if they were using the dipstick as a guide for how much oil should be in the engines would seize because there wasn't enough oil in them. So yeah, little things like that I think are incredibly effective.
Sabotage.
But you know, but that is, I mean, theater also is an incredibly powerful tool.
I agree.
And you know, these bigger gestures of like guillotines, for example, that's a form of theater. And I think that has
But so is terrorism. Terrorism is theatrical. That's the point of terrorism. It's to instill the terror, right? And to do that, you have to have the grandiosity and you have to have the impact.
How much terrorism that we see is actual terrorism and isn't some like black money?
It's relative, right? So one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter, right? So
not just that, but I'm talking about the authenticity of like you know, who's bankrolling it, who's
because terrorism by definition is a non-state actor acting, and if it's financed by a state, which is 90% of the time, is it fair to call it terrorism? Because at that point, wouldn't you call it
right?
Like Blackwater,
controlled opposition, basically.
No, like military contracting.
Yeah,
sure.
That too.
Military contracting that we're pretending is terrorism. That's 90%.
But this becomes semantic. In the end, what it is violent acts made to instill terror. and whether that's funded by this person or that person, you know, like let's say a guy goes and like he's gonna go bomb someplace or whatever, and then some Freemason sneaks $10,000 into his pocket without knowing that he did it. Like he's suddenly funded by some guy. Does that make it not terrorism? I don't know. Like it doesn't matter. In the end, what matters is the impact that it had and the terror.
Depends on if the Freemason's a state actor. Because
that does remind me.
Yeah, I agree. But it's just whether it's a state act. Every person acts for some political ends, and so whether it's the state or the pre-state, then like it doesn't matter because you're the terrorist of now is serving the state of the future anyways. The new state is gonna come after.
I remember in some James Bond movie, like the bad guy, his whole thing was like, I'm gonna buy puts on this airline and then blow up a plane, or like this new like company that's releasing a plane and just blow it up. And I was like, what a stupid fucking idea. Like this guy's supposed to be a Bond villain. He's like, oh, I'm just gonna blow up the company and tank their stocks and profit off of it. I was like, oh, that's
all you gotta do is hire a bunch of female pilots to TikTok instead of flying. I mean, it's
oh my god, wait, this is all the Dr. Evil route though. You just hire a bunch of women in short skirts and then you make them go and do shit and then things
I feel like the Starbucks in Austin Powers 2 is the way. But okay, I just want to harp on this more because I feel like people are going to be upset at me for taking this side against deporting university students who say things we don't want, which is weird for me because hey, I hated those kids when I was in school. For the most part, I thought they were so tedious and annoying. Nobody protests on a Saturday. You know what I mean? These guys, they interrupt in the middle of the week while you're trying to go to class. And it's one thing if, I'm in the middle of this. I can be.
Wait, were they protesting at school? Or were they protesting like
college? I've seen protests in college about every little thing. I mean, I used to protest myself because I'm from California. It's a normal thing to do. Just also to get off of class. But one time I'm driving a girl in my car through UCSC, and there's a big road around the school. And the school was designed to stop protests. So there's different sections of the campus. So it's really hard to block off any one point. But they're in the middle of the road with their signs, and they're trying to stop my car from going through the road. And I needed to get to class. I had like a midterm or something like that. And I didn't run over anybody, but I didn't stop. I slowed my car down. I was like, yeah, we're going through this. And then they started like hitting on my car and all sorts of like, dude, I'm literally like, I am you people, right? Yeah. You guys are all freshmen.
Now you see why you'd want a truck that could blow black smoke at protesters.
My brother's got one, bro. He calls it blowing coal. He's been doing that all of his life.
Oh, man.
But, and if you grow up in Santa Cruz, you're going to be like, either I'm a leftist, cut off my penis, or you're going to get a truck that blows coal. You don't have – it's that pendulum.
The thing is that protesting used to work really, really much better. Like it was something that was very efficient because it was such an event that was hard to stop. People just saw it. They went out and then they talked about it, and that was that. News didn't have the propagation force that it does now, and so it was more – like it was person to person as opposed to what the newspaper and the newspaper would actually report more accurately back then. And over time, it was fine-tuned to become a system of, okay, well, we're going to go make these people behave this way and go do these protests. And then we're going to report on it however the fuck we want that will serve us. And that's what protests ended off as. It was just, well, like
we're going to drop off pallets of bricks in the middle of a protest route.
Yeah. Like eventually it became that. It became, look, my real problem with protests is that there is no unified force behind it. The only thing that they really have is the thing that they're protesting against.
But are these?
They're not united. They're not united for a for. They're united with an against. And
what do you think it should take to all right, pro-Palestinian Muhammad Khalil? What do you think it should take to be deported if you're a student? Like, what do you think you have? Like, how his limit was? He was pro-Palestine. He said Israel is committing human rights violations. How far over the limit is that? Is that over the limit? Like, should he have been not allowed to say that? Should he not be allowed to say he thinks what he thinks about Israel and about Palestine, or should he be allowed to say that? Should we have said, you know what, as Republicans, as Trump supporters or whatever, we don't want the same thing to happen to him that happened to conservatives for the last 10, 15 years, where if you said anything truthful about anything, you know, you'd have you'd be blacklisted, canceled. Are we going to start canceling? Are we canceling people now? That's what we did to this kid.
I have a real trouble with like free speech for Muslims because they are so censorship oriented in their culture. We can't draw Muhammad, and it's just like until we can draw Muhammad, why?
Okay,
you know, and I'm not saying
I think we should be able to draw Muhammad again, like we did in 2000.
I'm not saying censor this person, but I'm saying like, you know, hey, we should be able to be more critical of Islam, of Muslims, and like the immense
I'm doing
culture
it right now. Like, all right, since I'm standing up for this guy, I'm gonna just show the South Park image of Muhammad. I don't know. We'll
you know,
we'll see how that goes for me.
I think good luck, but I think it's you know it's not that I want to see this image. It's just that like, okay, well, you're putting so much importance on free speech, but you're willing to go and kill people who say and do things that you don't like. Like it's hard to defend that, you know, like it's hard to have to hold both positions. You're like, yeah, I'm a free speech guy, but also, you know, I support whatever Muslims tell me not to think, not to do. It's like, okay, well, let me criticize both then. If I can criticize Israel, I have to criticize Palestine. I think that's my issue with all this. It's just, you have to be pro-Palestine or pro-Israel. And I'm like, what if they're both assholes? What if they're both supremacists, being supremacists, reacting to supremacists?
See, I feel like it was fine.
It
was fine before 2001. In 2000, when South Park did the Super Best Friend special, it was fine. And it's not that there's some religious power that is like a voodoo rite that's keeping this from happening. It's violence. It's bullying and intimidation. People are afraid of having their families attacked. And so because of that violence, well, so are we just becoming that? Because I feel like we don't need to, we can probably protect both. We should have a country that's so balls to the wall that you can have these opinions without it destroying. What's the reason why we're so afraid of this kid talking about, you know?
Because it's not about truth. Ultimately, it's about control. It's about systems of control. And the notion of something being true or not is entirely dependent on who's in power. And so we will be lied to. Truth is arbitrary for most people. It only really means what I think, what I believe, and everyone else has to agree. And so, you know, I think the way forward is the dissolution of these boundaries and these false sort of narratives we've had created over centuries, over millennia, that are designed to essentially control idiots. That's basically the problem that we have to deal with for all of humanity. It's how do we control fucking idiots? And that is the greatest task we've ever had, and we can't actually solve that problem.
Actually, I think it's pretty simple. I think if you could cycle through, like if you just take an average person and make them feel angry, happy, then sad in that order every single day, like you could pretty much control anyone. That's like a third of their reality.
Maybe, but you know, it all depends, because there's a whole spectrum of idiots out there with all these special little idiocies to them, you know. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that every idiot is only an idiot. I am a strong believer that people can be both idiots and geniuses at the same time. It's just that their idiocy is usually much stronger than their genius, you know? And so it's about controlling that aspect, that bestial aspect of humans. You know, like how do you control teenagers before they become fully consciously aware, fully like capable of actually processing information and processing their emotions and all this stuff. You have to create systems of control, systems of addiction, systems of coping.
How about you, Vega?
Don't you think? I think people are pigeonholed into being idiots by trauma and also being put in a survival state. You know, when you're in fight or flight, your brain literally shuts down.
I guess, but the opposite is also true. Most people I know are very traumatized people, are very smart as well. Like they had to, it's like reality became a puzzle for them that they had to figure out, you know? It's either that, it's
and then
either
they become, that's psychosis.
Oh yeah, sure. We are in a collective psychosis, that's for sure.
Vega, what do you think the limit should be? Like, this kid getting kicked out for what he said, you think it's right? Or like, what do you think about these foreign kids not being given the same rights that citizens have for free speech? Or like, what do you think about this? What precedent does it set? Like, what do you feel about all this?
Well, it's a slippery slope, because once they're going to start with these people, and you could argue that some of them are citizens, and then it'll go towards natural born citizens. Like this is just, they're getting their toes wet, they're dipping their feet in the pool. It's like seeing how much we can get away with. Oh, we can get away with that. All right, cool. We're going to move the goalpost. Now, if you say, instead of just saying X, now if you say X and Y, or X and Y and Z, and you're even mildly associated with who we have deemed as the opposition, boom, FEMA death camp or whatever. They
Sure,
never
but
got a chance to use all of those.
But didn't that happen with the left?
Huh?
Did that happen with the left?
Socially, no one got put into an
Yeah. No. You're right. But those are the steps. That's a step towards that, though. Like it's
but we know.
Let's say that's step 2, and what you're talking about is like step 6.
Yeah, the mainstream left are also fascists. You know what I mean? And the mainstream left are really centrist. They're corporatists. They're centrist. You know what I mean? They're like, both parties are trying to maintain sort of corporate power. The right sort of leans more into the military angle of it, because the military is how the U.S. sort of strong arms foothold into having access to resources all over the world,
right.
so that we can gatekeep those resources and gatekeep the technology that is being suppressed by basing our entire economy off of those resources. So so right now we're seeing more of a militarized movement towards that same kind of like corporatist ideology, whereas the mainstream left was using their military, which is the media, social perception.
I have a question then. Do you think that like this? I mean, this is part of an oscillation, right? We can see the escalation of both sides. Like for a long time, there was anti-white rhetoric, anti-male rhetoric, anti-hetero rhetoric, and using this rhetoric, this is what the right is using to justify their current rise and escalation of all these things. So it's like they feed off of each other, and like it almost seemed like irrational the way that the left leaning or the liberal leaning were sort of insisting on this sort of this blatant racism, blatant sexism, blatant discrimination that literally was segregating us into cultures where it was like, you're always wrong because of these attributes, because of these things. And now we're going, whoa, that was so radical. That was like, like that was almost starting the genocide. And now they're going, okay, well, we have to react to that with our own genocidal. And it's like, I think that's supremacist versus supremacist in the end, right? Where you just have two genocidal forces, because the only real solution that anyone seems to be offering is kill the right people, and so it's the end result ultimately, and I don't buy it.
If you want to look at it from that binary, sure, but that just seems like controlled opposition to me. And just to touch on what you bring up with sort of the pendulum sort of like swinging against white patriarchy, because white Westerners have dominated history according to the West.
Sure.
Let's boil this down to like the simplest thing to understand. Kid Rock, okay? Kid Rock was
Kid Rock is pretty deep, actually, but okay, go on.
Exactly. No, exactly. He was a white kid in Detroit, came from a moderately wealthy family, and he grew up in a culture that was like very into, the streets and black stuff. He had a freaking 2-foot flat top. And then he plays some white trash kid in Joe Dirt and makes it his whole personality. Why? Because of the privilege that comes with like just being like, you know what, I am a white
course.
person.
Of course.
So yeah. So,
Yeah, okay, but at the same time, the thing is that privilege is based on location, where you are,
Yes.
and so where you are not only geographically but culturally, like, and so
because what is privilege?
Kid Rock,
accessibility.
basically, I think that the problem is that Kid Rock wasn't talented enough to outclass Eminem as the token white person in this sort of culture.
I mean,
Eminem,
I think he's more
Eminem,
white. This is really brilliant.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But
Eminem
Eminem didn't get there because of white privilege. He got there because of talent privilege, basically.
Yeah.
And every other white person was struggling to be taken seriously in the rap industry. And so the same thing would happen multiple times with Black people who tried to appeal to the country demographics. They managed to, because again, sheer talent. And that's what really makes the difference. While a guy like Kid Rock, the guy like Kid Rock, he can create a character, like you said. And I'm not so sure that it's to call it white privilege is one thing, but it's culture. He's appealing to the culture, to the stage that he would be most efficient in. And so
if you take over one rapper on MTV, it could have been all of CMT for a while.
If he could have done it, if he could have been on the level of an Eminem, he would have done that. But he had to rely on this other, more comfortable, safe area that he could go to, and that's something else. But I don't know if it's white privilege.
Well, because he exists in this. Yeah, if he was in China, that wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But because the accessibility that comes along with falling into a safe, comfortable position.
Asians have Asian privilege in Chinatown. Obviously, it's just you can communicate with each other better. You have language barriers that are different, cultural differences that are different, and so it depends where you are. And I agree that sure, you can call it white privilege if you want, but the notion that Black people don't have privilege in Black culture, in Black communities, in hip hop scenes, in the things where they dominate. Everyone has privileges and drawbacks. And
but hold on a second.
The point.
When was he known as Bobby Shazam? I've never heard of this. All right, sorry, Vega, go ahead. Sorry.
Robert Shazam.
But you bring up very valid points. People have access in their communities. Now, the movement right now is to just sort of maintain the foothold of the white male American as the dominant demographic in the States, because that is historically, been the case.
But the thing is this a bad thing? I always hear people talk about white supremacy, but no one talks about Chinese supremacy in China. No one talks about Japanese supremacy in Japan. No one talks about Black supremacy in Africa.
Han supremacy in China.
The thing is, and I'm not saying that we should be talking about it like that, but calling it white supremacy is just going, there's too many white people, basically. And it's just okay, but why? Why is that too many white people? What makes it more too many than too many Japanese people in Japan or too many Chinese people? No one's going we need to balance those ecosystems. It's only in white countries where we're going, there's a white supremacy problem here. So we need mass immigration from brown countries and Asian countries and every other country. And I just don't understand. Literally, the justification is white people bad. White people have colonized and stuff. And I'm okay, but every culture has colonized. Why aren't Africans demanding, say, reparations from Islam for enslaving them for thousands of years, hundreds of years, sorry? And
I think no white people do stuff like this.
The thing is, everyone seems to be mad at white people for doing what every other culture has ever done, except on a bigger scale and more successfully. And it's going, okay, you colonized, and then they spent all their time colonizing each other for so long. It's I've been thinking about it. Okay, let's say we give natives back their land, okay? And I'm not against that by any means, but just how would that logistically work? Would they unite under one native banner and then they get the entire country together, or will they go back to warring tribes that are kidnapping each other, that are doing all these things? They were fighting. They were fighting for
paths of mastodons, which apparently stick to Canada and Mexico. Have you noticed that? They follow borders. It's weird.
because of how resources are managed or mismanaged now, I think the fall into tribalism to that degree doesn't make sense.
Okay, so they would become more advanced because they got colonized. Now they're going to unite because of the events that white people caused and all this. They would make a better united native country.
I want to go back to what you were talking about, like Chinese supremacy in China and like white supremacy. It's dominance. Let's not say one's better than the other.
I had the Power Rangers picture ready for that already. Just all day.
Yeah, but by dominance,
Black Rangers dominating
over the other.
But by dominance, do we mean majority versus minority? Yeah, because just by sheer number, by sheer number.
Yes.
And is it bad to have more of one number than another?
I think when you are steering a civilization ideologically,
I can't look at this picture with a straight face.
For one reason or another, I mean,
great power
in China, what is it? Z is like really he what do you call it? Soapboxes a lot about like, we're a communist country. Look out for the little guy, yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera. That's the rhetoric. That's the ideology that they're pushing, even though their actions may be a little bit different because they're trying to compete with us, really. Like, that's sort of like on the surface, that is the theater. That's the role that they're kind of assuming. Whereas here, the emphasis is put on individualism and individual success, and that's has its drawbacks because it really just wants to fuel a linear consumption system, which doesn't work in a closed ecology and economy that is on this planet, and the whole thing about like, oh, we're going to go into space and we're going to find like a meteor made out of gold and then we're going to use that and yada yada yada, we're going to get all these resources off planet. It's like, that's fucking bullshit. Like, oh, we're going to terraform Mars. Like, why not just fix this planet? Oh, the only reason that they want to do that is so they can crown themselves kings of that place after they stake their flag, so they can make the rules there.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
if history is any indicator.
Yeah, but the thing is that we don't we're still kind of a little too muggle for all this, like we don't know. Like, I'm not saying it's happened, but let's say the King of England in the year 1602 or whatever, an alien came down and was like, here's how to steer a civilization and like how to unite humanity until you're fair enough to actually be a fully united planet. Like, we wouldn't actually have access to this knowledge. So we can only base ourselves on what we experience through the suffering of this process. And then we go, those people are all selfish and they're all, they call themselves the Illuminati. Apparently that's because they're illuminated and enlightened and all that. I don't know if it's true, but I do know that I don't know. And that's all I can really go by.
All I know is I keep seeing the world change. So like, we have our friend JD Peel is in
it could
JD
be
Flames is in Japan right now.
Yeah.
And you can buy a house in Japan for like $75.
He seems like the type.
Did you say $75?
This is a house this is a house for $70. You're gonna have to redo the roof. But like, dude, what's going on is people keep moving away. Like, they don't want to
shrine house.
Yeah, this is a shrine house.
It's a fixer-upper.
It's a fixer-upper, but
I need some plumbing.
And there's snow in Japan. Like,
I watched Godzilla -1 last weekend.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen it.
No, I've not seen it.
Oh, I really do recommend it. It's
Godzilla
about
-1.
Yeah. Godzilla -1. It's about like Hiroshima. The bombs got dropped, and right after Godzilla emerges, like in the following years. No, they don't really explain it, but it's implied that it's a nuclear reaction, and he gets more powerful with the nuclear reaction. That's the oldest Godzilla story. The first Godzilla movie, that was what it was. Godzilla is a reaction to the bombings. But in this one, it's from the point of view of a kamikaze pilot who became afraid. Well, he was a coward, or he didn't want to die uselessly, basically. So he didn't go and kamikaze himself, and so he feels remorse because the bombs dropped right after. So he's like, how can I redeem this? And so it's about him like trying to basically come to terms with like making that sacrifice. But ultimately, it's the most positive ending for humans that you can imagine in this sort of scenario. And so it's about the hopefulness after World War II, after the bombs dropped, the unity that Japan felt, and the sort of like cultural growth that emerged out of it. That they had a strong emphasis of not relying on government, because government was ineffective. Government was making planes for them that didn't have ejection seats, and so like they were making things that just were for sure going to make them lose the war, thus the kamikazes. And it's funny because the previous Godzilla movie to this was called Shin Godzilla, and that one was about the inefficiency of government in reaction to natural disasters, because this movie was about the Fukushima reactor and the tidal waves. And so this was made about the government reaction to that process. And so it's interesting to see that sort of storytelling narrative, like the psyop or the psychological programming that they're trying to instill into Japanese culture of like, government Japan isn't the answer. It has to be a function, but not the actual, like the government won't save you, basically.
I feel like the fact that most of these freaking people live in the city now and they won't even visit their grandparents or parents' houses, and they're just like, take my house, please, take my parents' house, and like whatever's in it, like they leave their family shrines, even means that things are changing in China, right? Like it's not worth it to them to go live out. Oh, sorry, Freudian slip, but yeah, also in Japan, my bad. But here's an example where the rest of the country, there's going to be 3 cities with any people, and then the rest of it's becoming a ghost town. So my thought, the reason I brought this up was, how can we look at Mars and expect it to exponentially increase in population, and that the human race is planning on exponentially increasing in population forever and throughout this cosmos or something?
I think
when Japan's becoming a ghost town because things don't always rise, sometimes they fall.
The thing is that the rise and fall is part of that process, right? Like destruction breeds creation, and with that comes the renewal of joy, the renewal of excitement. Because the thing is that things get stagnant, and things have gotten very stagnant on planet Earth. Like our culture, our systems, they're very, very antiquated, and we have to update them at some point. But I remember, like, for a long time, people were talking about, like the fear of world-ending catastrophe here that is beyond our control. Like volcanoes could go off tomorrow and completely destroy the entire planet's livability for us, and there'd be nothing that we can do about it. We could try to put corks in it; it won't do anything, And there's a whole array of examples like this. Like a meteorite could hit us that could wipe us all out. It could happen. We keep hearing about it, and so they control us through fear, no doubt about that.
Wait, I want to circle back to what you said before. Do you think things are really stagnant? I mean, we've only had industrialization for what, like 400 years? Think about it, like
what I mean is that there are systems that are antiquated, and they're being replaced gradually as we're evolving. But part of this evolution does have the end result of us going beyond our current boundaries and our current limits. Maybe we will get off planet if the idea is that we have to maintain the human species. Like if we don't care about the human species, then keep it on Earth. Why bother going to Mars? But if you're trying to go like, hey, we're trying to avoid extinction events over here, we might as well go terraform another planet so we can have two. Well, it's like it's base places for humanity to stay alive, basically. And so maybe that's impossible. Maybe.
Hold on. What, Chris? What were you trying to say about like the Industrial Revolution so recently? You were going from there.
No. I was just asking if you really feel like how stagnant do you think the world really is? I mean, we've only had like that for 400 years. Before that, we've been in other ages for like maybe close to.
No. What I mean, just to clarify, what I mean by stagnant is that it's reaching the end of a cycle.
Yeah.
And that stagnation is part of the dead wood that we need to get rid of. Like there's things that we need to get rid of. There's mentalities that we need to get rid of. There's approaches that we need to get rid of. And there are things from the archaic old cycles that we need to regain. And so the old cycles, I mean, the old cycle is just the beginning of a new cycle, really. So when we're starting that new cycle, we are at a point of new colonization, new passive exploration, entirely new domains to conquer.
Just
And
based
those
on
are
what Andreas is showing us here, I see how like people like salarymen in Japan are living out of their cars because they're just like, the fuck do I need an apartment for? And I think that's like us returning to nomadic culture in a way. It's like we're just going full circle.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you stop paying rent and you live out of the tree. Didn't we see like there was somebody had like a looking for van life, Nomad Push. I love this guy. Have you seen
living in a van by the
there
river?
was there exactly like in Japan sounds all right being homeless in Japan, but that's not common. People kill themselves. They just called being an evaporated person, right? Like a lot of Japanese people are just now kind of coming up with this idea that they don't have to kill themselves out of shame if they aren't a slave to their laboring debt corporation that they have to drink with their boss every night. You have to pay your boss, like you have to give your boss presents, all this stuff. So what they have now are companies called evaporation companies, or night movers is a short term. And what they do is they help you secretly disappear in the middle of the night, sort of like the FBI, but maybe just because you don't like your job or because you lost your job or you embarrass yourself in front of your wife and your kids, you just disappear.
That's crazy.
Or maybe, yeah, I mean, like what? But they never had that before because that's like
a fixer for the common man, like the layman's fixer.
Of course, they had that back in the day because the thing is now we're so connected that you need that sort of shit to disappear. But back in the day, you could just like drive like 30 kilometers and they would never find you again. You know, like back in the day, that's how simple it was. They'd be like, "Oh, I heard I saw him like in that county over there." Well, yeah, but it's hard. It'll take him like 2 years to walk there or something. You know, so now we have so much access to everyone and to everything that. Yeah, we need to disappear if we want our lives to change to a degree, for some people at least. Yeah.
I want to find that meme we saw earlier that was like, "I'm a homeless man and I'm the happiest I've ever been."
Yeah, I saw that one.
It was interesting. I wish I could remember exactly where that one went, but you know, something like they recently became homeless and now they like climb trees and they wake up outside and there's no reason why their life has to be terrible.
I've been saying that for a long time now. I think that the problem with homelessness and trying to solve it is that a lot of people have the nomadic impulse, and you can't get rid of that nomadic impulse. It's so deeply ingrained in humans, and people are just trying to force it out. They're like, you have to have the house. It's like, no, man, I lived in the forest for like millions of years, and now you're telling me I have to be in a box? Why? You know, and most people just don't understand that because they've been so programmed that, yeah, you got to live in the box. If you don't live in the box, you're going to die, you know. But of course, it's true. If you don't live in the box, you die sooner. But that's the way that it always was. And that's the way people always want it to be.
Do you think houses have that homunculi effect where it's like, you know, like a car, for example, it becomes an extension of your body? Like,
of course.
Like, yeah,
you are
your shit. Yeah,
you are your environment, you know, and it's symbiotic. Like if you have a shitty environment and you keep letting it be shitty, you're gonna get shittier and shittier, and your environment's gonna get shittier and shittier. So the more that you take care of your environment, that you fine tune it, and that you update it periodically, like, you know, I do believe in feng shui to a degree. Like there's an energy flow to things, and if you set up a room a certain way, it has an impact on consciousness, on your mood, on the way even other people's experience of you, you know, like it's all connected.
Yeah, like is your TV on the northern or eastern wall? Like because of the direction and
everything. That is one thing, but I think that feng shui as an idea is more interesting than whatever they mapped out of it. Because like a mapping is one thing, like it's fine. It's their way of doing it, their technique, their idea of how it should be. But like that depends on the energy you're trying to put out, which standard you're trying to put out. Like if you're a metalhead and you want metal vibes, don't go reading feng shui for like how to place your TV. You do it in the most metal way possible, which could be, I don't know, put it on fire.
Well, one thing that was cool that I learned was putting your bed in a way where when you get up and you could just look up and you see the doorway, all entryways of the bedroom. I was like, that's pretty neat, I guess. And also like not having underneath your bed cluttered. Apparently it promotes better flow if it's all clear.
Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of makes me think of like, there's some people who believe that if you put certain things under your pillow, then it'll affect your consciousness when you're sleeping. And like it gives off frequencies and then you're absorbing them more when you're sleeping. So like there's some curses, some magic curses that are based on that, where if you put something under someone's bed that is bad, then they're going to be cursed by it and stuff. So yeah, declutter. Because I think that's what's happening is that people are constantly casting these sort of spells on themselves through the unconscious magic that they're doing by living in a space and being human, basically, and just having, say, like pictures on the wall of something they like, or paintings, or the colors, the sort of chairs, everything.
So you're saying Marie Kondo, this is what she was really about, but like on the surface, she could only get like express so much of it. But this is like the real meat of what she was trying to get to.
Who is this?
Marie Kondo is the lady that's like, does this spark joy? And if no, they just throw it away. If yes.
Oh no, the thing is, the problem with the notion of sparking joy is that it's too cycloptic. Like, why would you only want to spark joy? Are you fucking dumb? Like, why is joy the only thing
that's not
that matters?
metal. Like, get the fuck out of here with your joy.
Like, I think that's why Kamala lost, because it was too joy focused. Who gives a fuck about joy when people are starving, when people are losing their homes, when there's war going on? Stop talking about joy. That's not like, what are you, fucking like a smiling villain or something? Like, come on. So yeah, I don't believe in that sparking joy thing. I believe in that vibe. It's all about vibing. You put the vibe you want, you put it in, you're gonna get it back.
I see. Andreas, how do you feel about vibes?
Do you know that vibe is the German word for like a woman, but more like property style? It's like the vibe.
I got two vibes.
I like that the term matrix means mother.
Yeah, or vagina. It's also good.
Yeah.
I
wish we go back to that. We should really go back to that. I prefer that instead of going like we should use the word matrix for mothers, for uteruses and wombs, instead of being like just a vagina and like, come on. Who came up with the word? Vagina sounds like a German word. Yeah. Vagina.
Hey, what's up? You came back. Are you back?
I did. I made food and I spilled guac on my old hoodie, so I'm in a new one.
That's a nice hoodie.
Guac attack.
Well, we were talking about like homelessness and property and things like that. I don't know. I thought maybe Vega, you want to catch us up on this idea of like what do you think about property generally?
I like how we jumped from women to property, but you were saying that it's the same.
I use the word vibe. That's why.
Yeah. Property is a really interesting thing because I like. Do you like really own yourself? Are we just not stewards of this arrangement of material that we call whatever our name is with whatever identifying numbers?
Wife is Will. That's pretty cute. All right.
Sure, but I agree, Andrew. Go on.
Oh, just stewardship. I mean, it's all temporary. You know what I mean? It's
sure.
People will say like, "Oh, I mean, they're gonna last forever." They only last as long as I do.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying.
But families seem to buy it. Like, so this idea of owning property and being a tenant versus a landlord, I think that comes into that idea. Like, you create a generational wealth thing where you have families are owning land other families can't own.
I think that's one of the major problems with our civilization is that we fear nepotism, and we're all about people taking care of themselves. Every person is an island to themselves. Your fathers won't help you, your mothers won't help you financially. I mean, they will do whatever else they can, but the infrastructure of the family is no longer rooted in generational wealth. Instead, we go, no, everyone has to start from scratch. And some people even want it because they recognize that generational wealth can spoil people and create these sort of grandiose personalities that delude themselves because they think that they're superior just because their families are more organized. And, fair enough to a degree, it is a more effective way to have a family in the long term. But I think we need to go back to that. We need to value that sort of cohesion of the family in building businesses, in building like work together. People don't want to do the family business. They want to go do their own thing. But the thing is, they should be able to do both. You should be able to take part in the family and create a branch of the tree yourself so that you can expand that culture, that contribution to culture.
I agree.
Finally.
Yeah, I think, but it's like, why limit that to just your family? Why isn't there this sort of like cumulative sort of progress it seems like a lot of the guardrails to progress exist in compartmentalization.
Sure.
And, it's like, look at places like Area 51 and how, people report that things operate there. It's like no one knows what each other is doing. You're all working on separate things. But think about how much progress could occur if everyone was clued into, if the energy people were clued into the nuts and bolts people and all that jazz. So but I mean, it's like it's all control. They just want to they want to be able to, by compartmentalizing things, you're able to.
Well, you can control the process, right?
Information. Yeah, monopolization of information is really the issue to me.
So the thing is that let's say you like it has to be a process, right? Let's say we're to reach the point where everyone gets a fairer share, right? A lot of people will misuse that fair share in some stupid way, and so we have
it already happens.
Yeah, that's what already happens. That's what I'm saying. It already
buy a motorcycle.
But the thing is, the more power people have, the more they can self-destruct or be dangerous, and this does come with an unpredictability and some problems. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't ascend people. I'm not saying we shouldn't ascend people. I agree with you though that we need to have this wealth be shared cumulatively with everyone.
It's a psychological reason it doesn't seem to work. So again, we looked at Japan, and in Japan you can get a house for $70, but you're outside of the city. So basically, everyone lives in Tokyo or Okinawa or Osaka, but that's like 6,000 to 7,000 person per square kilometer, right? Yeah. So that's crazy. And then the rest of the country is zero people everywhere. So people could live in these other places, and you could set up. They already have like internet cafes where you can sleep and you get free food and everything.
Ramen.
Yeah, but there's a scarcity mindset where people want to spend $5,000-6,000 for 10 square meters or something crazy like that to live in. Yeah, a cubby to live in a certain part of Tokyo, right?
Right.
And so why do we do that? Why is that what humans want? And this is the article or the meme we saw earlier. I love smoking crack 47 says, I effing love being homeless. I literally don't have shit to worry about anymore. I can go out and do whatever the F I want to do every day now. I have practically no stress, no depression, no anxiety, anything anymore. I'm in the best shape I've ever been in, both mentally and physically. I ride my bike all over the city all day. Got insane stamina now. I got shorties down to let me nut inside them now. I shoot meth all the time and do whatever the F it is I wanted to have the urge to do. Last night I masturbated in a tool shed and then climbed a 40-foot tree and hung out at the top of it and just watched nothing for hours. Life is amazing, and I truly mean it.
That's Dionysian. That's like dying.
Is it not? I mean, so isn't that kind of like a kind of freedom that we can't expect because we've built ourselves into a society that doesn't allow it? But realistically, there's so much empty space and there's so much infrastructure that it should just be like water fountains. We have water fountains and we have public trash cans and public toilets. We used to anyway. Why can't there be public rest facilities essentially and everyone be nomadic?
I guess we have to find a balance between play and order. Like I'm not saying disorder, but like play, the capacity to sort of turn things into fun, like to be able to, in any situation, have fun in that moment without disrupting the order, without disrupting the flow of necessity to make the whole system work. So, like you can see people trying to do this by singing in the metro or performing art outside in front of people. And for some people, it'll really, really annoy them. It'll really, really ruin their day. But I think that's a problem with the infrastructure itself. Metros are the problem, not the person playing the music, And not saying that everyone should be playing music at all times, because that is fucking annoying. But the idea of disruption of that norm to try to go and have that impact is that impulse. It's kind of similar to graffiti, like people, no matter what, you make all the order in the world, people will be like, I'm going to make some fucking graffiti. This is too clean. This is too orderly. We got to turn it into some sort of game, and they always do. So how do we do that in a healthy manner? Well, I guess there's designated areas for play and for game and stuff, but People want to play different
I feel
games.
like it incentivizes transactions. So if you have a place where it's more convenient and it's essentially free, or the sponsorship, it's a promise of the society, a social service that it benefits you. More people go to that place, right? So if there's a park, there's more people in the park, and then there's usually some way that they're expecting people to participate in that society. If
Sure.
the trains or the trams are free or convenient for people to use, then it's going to help business in every other way. So we're taking away that benefit by having people have to pay for their own places. It's one thing to want to own your own house, but this is that pod society thing. Like, shouldn't that be something that exists by now?
Right. So it's like there's this exchange.
Where are the pods? Oh shit. He just disappeared. But I was just asking, where are the fucking pods?
Yeah, Vega, you got thoughts on this again?
On the pods, where they are, property? Oh, I don't know. Property is it's transient, you know what I mean? Property is really just theoretical, isn't it? I would love to. Property seems to be a manifestation of ego at the very base of it, because the reason that people want to own things is to put their name on it. You know, look at our names, like our last names, our surnames, or whatever. That's we're owned by our genetic lineage.
Well, what do you truly own as an individual? I think when you really strip everything away, it's just your energy and your knowledge, right? What else is there? Everything else is truly transient, whether it's your property, whether it's your stuff, whether it's your money. Like, you can't take any of that shit with you after you die, for sure. But money but knowledge and energy, that's a different story. Like, maybe you do.
But I mean, it doesn't the real value from that knowledge and energy come from when you express it, when it's shared, when other people can kind of like see, like when you put it on display, you know?
Yeah. Like just you existing, you being alive, I guess, is an expression of your knowledge and energy.
Yeah, like a great artist, you know what I mean? Like arguably, like the lowest of the low, like economic participants. If they don't share their art, then they're really like useless, right?
Yeah. What's up, Vincent?
I'm back.
We were just talking about knowledge and energy.
I love knowledge and energy. Well, you know, maybe there is things that we keep with us after we die, but you know, I guess the idea is to hold on as long as we can while we're here. You know, nothing lasts at all. There's nothing that is going to last forever. And so, yeah, I don't believe in property either, but that's true I don't believe in countries either. You know, I don't believe in Palestine. I don't believe in Israel. I don't believe in the US or Canada. These are just titles for locations, and those boundaries have been redistributed countless times throughout history, and they will be redistributed. This isn't the final form of countries or the order of the world, that's for sure. And it's going to hurt the entire time because everyone is attached. We just grow attached to where we are, how we're doing things, and we go, this is me, this is us.
Yeah,
We've
I have
been
a question.
here a long time, this is us. It's like, no, that's not you. You've just been there a long time. That's not what identity is. That's not what self is.
Yeah, I have a question.
Geolocations.
Yo, Vince. Let's say you have a really rich person with no relatives, like no family, no kids, no living relatives, and they died. Like, what do you think should happen to their money and their assets?
If they have no one, nothing.
Yeah. Nothing.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, I think the whole thing is kind of a sham. Like, okay, you're redistributing a fake thing to the world. You know, like it's just digital stuff, anyways. Like, if you're talking about the actual resources, like, I don't know, if he owns a car or something, then yeah, give that car to give it to someone, you know, like whatever. But like, if it comes to actual money, then it's just like, okay, well, you're just adding zeros to zeros. There's infinite of the fake money anyways. So unless it has real gold and real resources, all that stuff, you know, just give it to the poor if you can.
This is Stefan says this feels like a psyop on the guy in the bottom left. Make sure nobody asks him what he thinks.
That's you, brother. Yeah, he looks like a cop.
What do you think, Nick? Do you have any thoughts or feelings about this stuff? Property, social, you know.
What do you think about what do you think about the body and tattoos? I don't have any tattoos, and I don't necessarily ascribe to the belief that when someone said that the only thing you have are your thoughts and like the things you learn and your spiritual energy, and that's what you take with you.
And
True.
your psychic
So
trauma.
Yeah, if your body's, do you look at it as a rental? Do you think? What do you think about tattoos and that kind of thing? Because when you get a house, if that's your property, you can. There's a homeowners association that kind of controls what you can do to it in certain parts of the world.
Well,
Yeah,
your body, your body is a rental.
Tattoos, though, are like the main reason people had tattoos was for being part of gangs originally, right? Pirates, Yakuza. It was showing that your body didn't just belong to God; it also belonged to a gang.
Yeah, but it was also it was also cultural displays as well. You know, like there's just cultures that made art on their bodies. So I think that, I mean, I was a tattoo artist for many years, and to me, tattooing, you know, it's superficial, of course, but I think it just depends on how you, like, okay, well, first of all, we're all renting our bodies to the earth. That's who we're renting it to. We're not renting it to some organization or some government or anything like that. Our bodies don't return to them. They decompose and they return to the earth. Will be gone with our flesh as it decomposes. So that gets washed away. It doesn't really matter. Maybe it matters to God, and he's like, why did you get tattoos or whatever?
I was 18. I'm sorry.
At that point, I think the question is, you know, like how beautiful do you make the temple that was loaned to you? And so if you fill it with beautiful art, if you cover your body with beautiful art, as long as it's tasteful, as long, you know, like if you're desecrating yourself, then like that's one thing. But if you're making art that honors your light and your sacred side, then hey, to me, it's all about the vibe, right? So if you put in good vibes, you're going to get good vibes out. If you put in bad vibes, you're getting bad vibes out.
Do you think there's is it Buddhism where you're reincarnated and so it's like, obviously don't take anything with you, your money, your house, your possessions, none of that. But do you think that you also don't bring your thoughts with you? Because like if you're reincarnated, you don't remember that you were a bird or a boy in a different country. It's none of your thoughts. But do you think that you can, in this lifetime, elevate your consciousness? So, you know, you're updating from iOS 17 and then 18, and then in the next life you start off on iOS 18. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that there is a type of like enlightened person that they've described that does remember when they come back. So as part of some Buddhist practices, they're like some bodhisattvas refuse to, like, they reject permanent enlightenment so that they can come back into the cycle and keep helping people reach enlightenment. And so maybe, you know, like, who knows, if you do remember your past life, that is true immortality, in my opinion. Like you get a new body and you get to remember your previous lives. That means you get to accumulate more knowledge, more information, and create multi-lifetime practice. Like if you know you're going to remember your next life, that means you can plan for it and you can set up systems that your future self will profit from. And that is true that is true power, basically.
Or your past self.
And when you die,
well, that retrocausality science.
When you die, you'll encounter two pools. The first pool is the pool of forgetting. If you drink from it, you'll lose all memory of your past, your experiences, and who you truly are. Instead, avoid this pool and seek the second, the pool of remembering. Drinking from this will let you keep your memories, wisdom, and understanding as you transition into the next phase.
Right. That's the thing. I think that you.
When did you tweet that?
Was
that today?
No, October 30th.
Oh, I was like, that's a
good one. But you know, I think that it's a good idea to forget some things, but I think that the way that we do actually remember is through wisdom and through our changed nature. With each lifetime,
is good to forget? What would you forget?
Probably the suffering and the disdain.
But is suffering not what contributes to wisdom?
Sure, but you can also get traumatized by it.
Yeah, it can feel. You know, like there's some aspects of trauma that make you worse and that you have to get rid of. Death is important because death is important because you have to give way to the new, and if you don't, then the deadwood will just accumulate and crush everything.
If you actually listen to a
that.
lot of like the near-death experience reports, like there's so many people, and a lot of them report the same thing generally. And they say one of the first sensations they notice is once they conscious in their post-death state, they lose all notion of pain, fear, like everything's just good. Everything feels good. And I think like to Andreas's post, it's like kind of when they come across quote unquote the light or the everything, the supreme being, and
the divine moment of truth.
Yeah, it's like, do they go back? You know, thus it's a near death
DMT,
experience.
by the way.
But if they do combine, it is like remembering. It's not really like gaining anything, or it's just becoming more of your true self, which is like layers down from like fifth dimension, fourth dimension, third dimension, or whatever.
My theory is that God had a psychosis and that we're here to fix it by fixing our own psychosis.
Well, yeah, we're all sort of, what is it? Bill Hicks. Matter is observing itself. Consciousness is matter observing itself subjectively or whatever from different points. I'm paraphrasing, of course. I've been thinking a lot about God consciousness and like higher and lower consciousness with like, you know, raising kids and everything. And my youngest is just starting to develop enough object impermanence to start playing peekaboo with, like developmentally. And I was thinking about how, you know, God, for lack of a better word, kind of like plays peekaboo with us. You know, it's just, if this is what an adult is doing with, you know, a 9-month-old to sort of like develop skills in, you know, just because, you know, I'm hiding behind my hands doesn't mean I went away. I can only imagine what higher consciousness would do with us as its children.
One of my favorite quotes from Carl Jung is a modern man can't see God because he doesn't look low enough.
And there's the scary conspiracy theories, how the moon is like this device meant to trap souls.
The moon is watching us. Sorry, I've been playing Marvel Rivals a lot, so I just have like the Moon Knight. He's upset. He's a schizophrenic with 3 personalities who believes the moon is an entity that's watching him, and so they're just, you know, like there's just moments where I'm like, yeah, I feel you, bro. I feel you. The moon.
Yeah, there's like people that would say that the Earth is like a soul prison, and resurrecting is actually this like form of enslavement.
So the moon is like the panopticon, basically.
Basically Scientology, yeah.
yeah. A lot of people believe it, but yeah, I remember taking a bunch of mushrooms multiple times, and I'm looking at the moon, and I'm like, you're watching me right now, aren't you? You know, I could feel it. Like the grand reflector right now is just peering right at me as I'm peering at it. And sometimes the clouds would literally shape like an eye around it. I'm like, okay, universe chill, universe chill.
Yeah. Well, you know, the eyes are projectors as much as they are perceivers, right? It's like the mind is a transceiver.
I definitely don't want to be scared of like resurrecting or being reincarnated. I want to keep the attitude where it's like, hey, I could do this all day, you know, like whatever. It's not going to be all good, but it's not going to be all bad. And if I have to like push this boulder up, I'll fucking do it, whatever, you know, like it's not up to me apparently. So I'll just do what I can. Like, what else can I do? Honestly. I mean, I do think it's noble. It's a noble pursuit to try to be like, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to stop accumulating karma. I'm going to stop eating meat. I'm going to stop the abuse of the environment, of people, of everything. And I'm just going to try to uplift my spirit into the next realm. I don't know. You could do that. That's cool. I don't
but
think
then would it not go back to like, if you see value in that and you see that value will be multiplied when you share it, would that not give some credence to the notion of wanting to return to share it with people who are like, hey, I've been where you are, and it's not the end all be all. You can go this way.
But you might be able to talk to them between lives anyways, you know? It could be that like you're still in contact with the living between their lives anyways, anyway, possible. Here, Andreas, I sent you something on Facebook, Andreas. This is relevant to what Chris was talking about.
Hold on, looking for it right now.
Damn, reincarnation. I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm attached to the game, but I don't want to sound like I hate it either. You know, I guess
I'm more fatty. You know, you love that fate. Love the fatties.
Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna fight for my liberation. Damn, Sansara got
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's important to have some amount of suffering in every life, but that it could become a material sense that you hold on to, and that conflicts with like the deeper truth, because you might think, oh man, I should never go into this situation again, basically, or any situation like it. And that's something you should maybe do for a lifetime, but maybe not after you progress to a certain point. I think you probably could at some point accept a bunch of different life's memories at the same lifetime. But most of your life, you should be spent focusing on what you're doing right then. You shouldn't be confused about being a pirate or Cleopatra, right?
Yeah, and as far as suffering goes, I think there's a balance between being like a Cenobite and a light being. You know, it's like you don't have to romanticize your suffering because that's not very zen. But you know, it's obviously being a fifth dimensional light being got boring enough for whoever to take material form.
Do you know about the Cenobites, Nick? They're like from Hellblazer, and they're these like
No, I
demons.
don't.
They're demons that come out of this Pandora's box thing that are from a dimension where everyone feels pleasure and pain like equally, basically.
I
So
knew it
it's
was
like
kink thing.
it's like a hellscape, and they all dress kind of.
They're pain
Cenobite,
worshipping. Yeah, exactly. Bondage freaks.
they look like bondage freaks, essentially.
Mm.
Cenobite religious order.
Spicy.
Yeah, but it's like because if you had no feeling, then you would crave feeling. So if you were like a spiritual being completely, then you might crave the sensation of eating until your stomach explodes, right? Or feeling heat, warmth until you burn, or cold until you freeze, right? Like all of these feelings are something that a spiritual being can't have. So it would be an obsession, perhaps. I think that's the idea.
Like some David Goggins shit.
Yeah. Existentially, though, like people are obsessed with, I mean, it's existentialist generation or civilization. More and more, that's the idea is like get as much out of your life as you can through feeling, just material feeling. I don't know. Instead of ascension or whatever, like we're talking about, trying to advance yourself out of samsara.
Well, I mean, I never really say like, yeah, you got to get out of samsara. I'm always like concerned when it comes to spiritual practices, like self-alignment. I always say the same shit, like mind, body, soul alignment. So they're kind of, I think when you have that alignment, just it works as an engine. You know, you can't stop that like perpetual movement that's just gonna naturally propel you higher with no force necessary. You're just like, hey, I just want to make sure my mind, my body, and my soul are not like messing with each other in any catastrophic way, just to keep that holistic engine going, you know? As long as you keep that balance,
yeah, there's certainly something to like spiritual like there's a form of like spiritual sensation. I don't think all sensation is based in matter. Like, yeah, our material senses are sort of like a barometer for our body, but I also, it's been my experience that my spirit can sense there is a spiritual barometer as well that there might be a physical interface to, but the sensation itself, I think the root of it is more spiritual than material.
Yeah, because the spiritual hiccups are like really nefarious because they're so subtle, right? It's like, it's not that anything necessarily bad has to happen to you, but if you feel bad about something, then that's going to make you make bad decisions, and bad decisions will pretty much have like enable bad things happening to you. So it's all connected in that weird way. But most people just focus, I guess, on 2 out of 3, because the third one is like, how can I control my emotions? They kind of bypass my rationality, but they're so integral. So it's not really about like, it's just tricky. You know, it's like a tricky game compared to just trying to manage your thoughts or your body.
That's why they call it a gut feeling. It's a real thing, even if there's not a scientific way to prove it.
Well, it definitely is, right? Because like your gut, your mind, a big part of your mind is your gut. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why getting an enema can change your personality. It's true.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you look at nerve endings and clusters of nerve endings are electrical centers essentially, and electricity is there is a material aspect to it because it's electrons moving from one place to another, but the electrons moving are sort of the byproduct of a force that's moving, right? So the chakras, they sort of like are indicative of these biological electromagnetic sort of axes. So yeah, no, it's pretty cool to be a human being on planet Earth for the most part, but it sucks when other human beings who are heavily invested in the material because they think that the material is the end all be all kind of ruin it.
Yeah, but so the idea that your gut might be controlling or communicating with you, right? Like I was showing that paper a bit ago. That was I lost it already, didn't I? But the idea that the gut biome is controlling your Internet of Things in your mind, right? Then it's easier to imagine that if we're talking about Neuralink at the beginning of this, it's easier to imagine corporations controlling your gut biome than your mind, because all it takes is the crazy kind of chemical food that they've made to figure out ways of targeting your gut biome, right? And
in
your gut.
Do you think they're making deals with like demonic parasites and that like really crave sugar? So they're like, here we're gonna sacrifice all these obese people by like
yeah. Well, I don't know about not even sugar. Like, do you guys
sugar as an example?
Would you agree that like just being stressed or anxious can affect your physical health, like just by being in that state every single day? Yeah. So it's clearly like. And when you talk about chakras before, they're really just talking about those emotional hangups that affect different parts of your body. And I think that's what all the spiritual schools are really kind of pointing to. You could look at it in a purely materialist lens and be like, yeah, things that like make me scared give me stomach problems. Things that make me anxious give me like head problems. Like
the thing is that I don't think it's appropriate to look at things in only one way. Like if we only look at materialistic or physical, then it's like looking at one facet and going like, well, this multidimensional thing only has one dimension. It's like, no, obviously, if there is a realm inside of us, a bacterial realm, then that's a realm unto itself, and it might have consciousness. It might have a level of consciousness that we can't really process because we're at a higher level of the macro microcosm, And so
when you look at an ant, it's seemingly nothing, but you look at the colony and you're like, oh, there's a living thing here. And like, if that's your biome, your gut biome, that's
the thing. We can't even conceptualize how hive minds must think, because obviously we're not hive minds, but we can only apply it to how we passively notice how humans kind of cohere together and move together, while ants might be actually just one entity living it out on its own. It could be. It's hard to tell.
Pheromone communication. All right, well, let's do some like last words, closing thoughts, I guess. Vince, you want to go first?
Sure. I'll just say this, that your true self isn't your identity. Identity is like an approximation that you create based on your self-perceptions, your biases, and the way that you've been socialized. But the true self is beyond language and beyond culture, and you can't really fill that void of meaning or lack thereof with these sort of cultural constructs that you just apply upon yourself. The true self is so much more, and if you actually look at yourself like that and look at others like that, then you can see that you're part of that whole, and you need to work in sync with it. Like we need a little more hive mind, but I'm a strong individualist, but I do think that we need that sort of balance. So I'm really strong on that balance idea.
Epic. And then what about you, Vega? Barry?
I don't know. I'll stick with a cheesy catchphrase. Team, TEAM, together, everyone achieves more. Teamwork makes the dream work. I know I pontificate on, collectivism and stuff, and I hate on the military-industrial complex's monopolization of oil and using it as sort of like just using as a way to manipulate the world market and mindset. But I also love machines, and I love motorcycles, and I love burning gas to go fast. But I would really love a 0-point energy motorcycle too. So it's I know that I'm a hypocrite, but if you could accept that you make compromises to exist in the world, then it's just a part of being a human being right now, and give yourself some grace, and we're all in this together.
I like it.
I hope.
What about you, Nick?
The other day I was reading Think and Grow Rich, which I thought was going to be like a strategy guide to shortcut to riches, but a lot of it was about mindset. And one of the things it says, which I'd already considered before reading, but it put it in words that I like. The sixth sense is a portion of subconscious that refers to the creative imagination, also referred to as the receiving set. And then next chapter it says, but these six senses will never function while there are indecisions, doubts, and fears in your mind. And I think that it kind of relates to our topic of fears and stuff. And I think that indecision, fear, anxiety can be resolved by addressing the root source, but it can also be resolved by addressing your mental framework of these things. And I think that I've started recently to consider anxiety sort of like bad dreams, where when I have a bad dream, I don't like wake up with like cold sweats and terrified. I think of it as my brain's way of going to the gym. And it's just like simulations, by simulating situations in my dreams of things that, mostly these dreams are predicated on my real world experience. Normally it's not imaginative. It's something that I'm afraid of or that I have already encountered. It's kind of like that, simulating that event so I'm better prepared to handle it in real life. And I think a lot of anxiety is that same simulation just while you're awake. And so we call it anxiety instead of a bad dream. But I don't know, I've been playing around with that idea lately of just in terms of happiness and focusing on love and stuff and overcoming fears and anxieties, just reframing how the topic is thought of, in addition to, addressing the actual items that are causing me to feel that way at their source. That's a whole other rabbit hole we can dive down sometime.
We should. That's pretty based. Someone just called you Pink Floyd, and I think that's a pretty good new.
Nice.
All right.
David infected someone.
All right, Chris.
Yes. All right. So I just want to say, generally by choice, I choose to view everyone as the same soul living out different lifetimes and different bodies as fractalizations of God or whatever. So we're all just different versions of each other. And from one version to another, thank you for watching. Thank you guys, everyone on the panel. You guys are awesome. And it was really cool to kill 2 hours with you. So peace out and cheers.
Yeah.
Bye to you, Andreas.
Thank you.
Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes.